I would now like to turn to the next question about the qualitative leap of climate denial. So to what extent is climate denial analogous to the denial of cancer risks, or to the skepticism around acid rain and ozone depletion? Is there, according to you, a qualitative difference between phasing out CFCs or tobacco products and overhauling an entire fossil fuel-based infrastructure that underpins capitalist modern systems of production and consumption? And linked to this very first question, how do you see the fight against climate misinformation relating to a socially just energy transition? Can we distinguish outright denial from legitimate political distrust of liberal market-based climate policies that risk deepening inequality or threatening workers' economic security?
Okay, sure, a couple of things there. So in terms of the strategies and tactics, the denial of climate change is exactly identical to the denial of the harms of tobacco or acid rain. So, I mean, this is what we document in our book. You see the exact same strategies, the same words, the same language, the same people, the same organizations. And so that was part of the point we were trying to make in our book, that this, in a way, tells us this is not a scientific debate, it's a political debate. And it's a political debate about governments, about regulation, about markets, and really ultimately about the limits and failures of capitalism. What's different about climate change is the scale of the problem. Part of the reason climate change has been so hard to deal with is because the fossil fuel industry is incredibly powerful, more powerful than the electrical utilities that were, creating acid rain, and even more powerful than the tobacco industry, although that was and remains a very powerful industry, but also because the scale of the problem is so great. As much as many, many people smoked, and as much as the American economy did rely on tobacco to a very great degree, the whole world economy didn't rely on tobacco. The whole world economy didn't rely on CFCs. But now you have a product that the whole world economy does rely on. And so the ask is much greater and the stakes are much higher. And you have many more people who stand to lose if we have this energy transition. On the other hand, you also have many people who stand to gain, but the people who stand to gain are not now in positions of power. And so it's an extremely asymmetric problem where the people who would lose are very, very powerful. They include, some of the richest corporations ever to exist. The people who stand to gain are ordinary citizens of Bangladesh, the Maldives, the Gulf Coast of the United States, the Netherlands. And these are people who often don't have a strong political voice. So even though there will be many people who will benefit from a green energy transition, they're not in the positions of power to make it happen. And that's probably the biggest asymmetry in this situation. In terms of distinguishing outright denial from legitimate political distrust, I think that question is wrongly posed because the people who deny climate change are not the people who also have some legitimate distrust of liberal market-based systems, right? The people denying climate change are mostly people who are trying to preserve the status quo. They're trying to preserve this fossil fuel-based economy that we have that is causing tremendous damage, including a lot of health effects from burning fossil fuels. When we begin to think about the transition, there are some legitimate questions about how we do that in a fair and just manner, but that's not climate change denial. Climate change is real, but now we have to figure out how to do this fairly. So I see that as a quite different kind of set of arguments. And frankly, we haven't really even got to those arguments because we're not in that transition. I mean, some people have tried to raise those questions, but we're still in the point of fighting. Well, here in the United States, we're still at the point of fighting a president who still, in 2025, 67 years after Dave Keeling first started measuring carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, is still claiming that climate change is a hoax.